The key idea in democracy, to restate, is that the people get to choose their rulers. They do it most of the time through elections. That's how they express their preference. And their rulers rule them at their pleasure. When the population is no longer satisfied with a ruler, the population can change the ruler. It's called self-government. That is democracy in two sentences. So if you have a system that calls itself democratic, where the people with power prevent the population from choosing certain people to lead them, then you have, by definition, a system that is not a democracy. Again, by definition, we don't need to debate that. This is not something that we have encountered in the course of American history until this election cycle, when you have the frontrunner on the Republican side, in fact, the frontrunner overall, the man who, all things being equal, will be the next president, Donald Trump, invalidated from running for office in certain states. And that's the product of a longstanding effort by permanent Washington to prevent him from running and prevent voters from voting for him. And they're doing that through the courts, as they so often do. Donald Trump is now fighting nearly 100 criminal charges across the United States, for which, if convicted, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, the first thing to know about these criminal charges is they're not what you were promised. You were told for 4 years that Donald Trump was a world historic criminal. And you might have sort of started to suspect that maybe there was some truth in that. Maybe he killed a building inspector in New Jersey in 1975, and the remains would be discovered in the Meadowlands, and you like Trump, but you'd have to admit, yeah, he's kind of a criminal. But that's not at all what happened. The 100 criminal charges that Donald Trump faces right now are, with no exception at all, ridiculous. They're picayune, piddling, minor, or they're just absurd and completely made up. One of them comes from the state of Georgia, and it's for election interference, where Donald Trump apparently said something he wasn't supposed to say about the last election. He noted that it was rigged, which it was, we now know. So a district attorney there charged Trump and 18 others with trying to overturn the 2020 election by expressing unapproved opinions. That person, that DA, is called Fani Willis, and it turns out she's totally corrupt as the charges she filed. How corrupt? Well, you know this already. She's been sleeping with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade. Fani Willis just testified about spending federal funds on vacations with this Wade guy. She said that Nathan Wade would pay for the trips and then she would pay him back with cash she kept in her mattress. Welcome to America 2024, ladies and gentlemen. Here's Fani Willis.
So let's talk about both of those. I know he initially paid for it. Did you pay him back?
For the cruise and for Aruba. Yeah, I gave him his money before we ever went on that trip.
You gave him cash before you ever went on the trip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you got cash to pay him back on these trips, would you go to the ATM?
No, lady.
You would not go to the ATM?
No.
Okay. So Fulton County pays you direct deposit, I assume?
Yes, Fulton County and the state of Georgia both pay me direct deposits.
Okay. So the cash that you would pay him, you wouldn't get it out of the bank?
I have money in my house.
So my question was, where did that cash originally come from, if it didn't come out of the bank?
Cash is fungible. I had cash for years in my house. So for me to tell you the source of when it comes from, when you go to Publix and you buy something, you get $50, you throw it in there. It's been my whole life. When I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign, I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you, I just have cash in my house. I don't have as much today as I would normally have, but I'm building back up now. So you just put money in. It's a very good practice. I would advise it to all women.
So you can't identify when you came into this cash or where the cash came from?
I didn't say I couldn't identify it. No, nobody gives me anything. I am sure that the source of the money is always the work, sweat, and tears of me.
So not only is she flamboyantly corrupt and stupid, she's also so filled with self-esteem that she can't bear being asked questions. She's enraged. Donald Trump is the bad guy, not her.
So your office objected to us getting Delta records for flights that you may have taken with Mr. Wade.
No. Look, I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
So my question was, do you have any problem?
I object to you getting any personal records of mine.
You did that. I did that. We all did that. That's what happens when you take a person from young childhood and tell that person, you're wonderful, no matter what they do, smearing crap on the wall, and you call it art. you wind up with someone who's like an egomaniac and impossible to deal with no capacity for introspection and a total unwillingness ever to admit fault. You wind up with a narcissist, and that's exactly what she is. And it went on like this for hours and hours. One of the most interesting moments in that hearing came from the testimony of Fani Willis's friend, Robin Yearty. Now, Yearty said that Willis and Wade began having sex in 2019. That would be 3 years before Willis and Wade said they started having sex. Now, if that's true, if the sexual testimony is accurate, that would mean that Willis started having sex with Wade before she hired him to investigate Donald Trump. Watch.
So you know that their relationship, their personal relationship, began shortly after this municipal court conference.
Yes.
And when I say personal, romantic. I just want to make sure we don't get in an argument over what personal and romantic is later. When I ask you personal, do you take that to mean romantic?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand it that their relationship began in 2019 and continued until the last time you spoke with her?
Yes.
So this is the moment when it's important to remember that the United States is a great country. It's the most powerful country in the history of the world. It's got hundreds of millions of really decent, hardworking, honest people living in it. And so you have to ask, why is it run by people like that? Transparent morons who are corrupt and arrogant, who are mismanaging everything. Like, why do we allow that? Why do we allow that? Good question. Meanwhile, over in the state of New York, Donald Trump was just ordered to pay $350 million for the crime of taking loans from banks for real estate deals and paying back those loans. There's no actual fraud here. He paid back the loans. These are huge banks, some of the biggest banks in the world. They were happy with the terms, but the state of New York is not happy. So CNN has been calling this a crime, of course, for months without explaining what exactly happened. Enter into that Kevin O'Leary, the famous investor from Shark Tank, trying to explain to a CNN host what this actually means. Watch this.
Excuse me, what fraud? This is not about Trump anymore. When you get a developer that builds a building and he says it's worth $400 million and he wants to borrow $200 million from a bank, which happens every day, everywhere on earth, including every American city, every developer is an entrepreneur. They shine the light on their building and they say it's worth 400. The bank does its own due diligence, as was done in this case, because they're very good at it. The banks are very good, and they say, no, it's worth 300. We're only going to loan you 150 million. That haggling has gone on for decades. That's how it works. And then in this case, even the bank that was supposedly defrauded testified and said, we didn't lose anything. We want to do business with this guy again. We'd like to. But the judge said, no, 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 no. Let's penalize this developer for $355 million. And if we're going to do that, let's penalize all the developers all across America. They've all done the same thing. All of them should go to jail, and we should stop building buildings.
So there's one thing he said that is indisputable. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about our system and whether we should allow a small number of partisans to burn it to the ground for the sake of winning a presidential election. And speaking of corrupt, the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, who reportedly is worth $15 million despite making less than $200,000 a year in her job. How did that happen, if true? Immediately congratulated herself, as always, after the ruling.
Today, justice has been served. Today, we prove that no one is above the law. No matter how rich, powerful, or politically connected you are, everyone must play by the same rules. We have a responsibility to protect the integrity of the marketplace. And for years, Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly, inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal.
Oh, come on. So big picture, the rest of us for decades now have been bullied into allowing the dumbest and most corrupt among us to run everything. They occupy positions of power in every big city in the United States, prosecutors' offices, and obviously they're tearing down what they didn't build. That's exactly what we're watching now. Maybe we should stop allowing that. But just last night, Letitia James, who obviously likes being on television, was back on TV saying she's actually more interested in just seizing Trump's buildings, just like we did to the Russian oligarchs. Forget the money. That's not enough. Just take the property. Watch.
New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Seize his assets. Just, we don't like the guy. We can just take his stuff. So big picture, this has been tried in other countries, South Africa, for example, and over time it just doesn't work. I mean, maybe you win the upcoming election in November. Congratulations. But what do you preside over when you do? Is anyone actually going to be doing business in New York? What's the tax base going to look like in 10 years? Well, of course, you know the answer to that. Everyone does. And yet no one's doing anything about it, just pretending it's all about Trump. Stephen Miller knows a lot about this subject. He was a senior advisor to President Trump. He's founder of America First Legal, which is one of the few really sensible organizations of lawyers in the United States. We're grateful for its existence. He joins us now. Stephen Miller, thanks so much for coming on. So what do we learn from this? I mean, there are a bunch of different things happening at the same time, efforts to stop Donald Trump from running for president, but they all seem kind of connected thematically. What's your takeaway?
Yes, they are all very much connected. I think the first and most important point is this. You can tell who truly has power in any society by looking at who can persecute an innocent person in broad daylight and get away with it completely. They can announce that they're going to do it, then they can do it, they can finish the job, they can impose the outrageous fines, the outrageous punishments, and they can say, I just did it. And the whole entire society, the whole system can either look the other way or applaud.
Wait. I'm sorry. I have to ask. I'm sorry. Letitia James is one of the most oppressed people in American society. Okay, I've been told that for a long time. How can that not be true? I mean, that's an article of faith with me. She's oppressed.
And so this is all part of the performative illusion where she stands up there at the press conference, we're the underdog, we took on the big, powerful Donald Trump. No, you took on the leader of a voiceless opposition party in this country. What you did is you are the ruling class. You are the ones who set the terms, who set the conditions, who control how all of our legal system and democracy runs. And then you're going after the man whose job it is to stand up for the dispossessed and the disenfranchised of this country. The message being, if you out there choose among you a leader to stand up to us, we will decapitate him. That's the message they're sending. You can be unhappy about the border invasion. You can be unhappy about formalized racism, discriminating against you and your children and your relatives. You can be unhappy about the decay of our cities and our system, the ruin of our education system. You can be unhappy about all your money, your tax dollars, your property taxes being stolen from you and redistributed to people who have no right to be here, to welfare cheats, and to criminals. And if you choose someone to stand up to all of this, watch us ruin him. Watch us destroy him. And even if he gets into office, as he did in 2017, watch us launch a soft coup day after day after day. And then in 2020, if we change the whole rules for elections, if we change how everything's run, if we break every single law in the key swing states about how elections should be run, watch none of our secretaries of state go to jail, none of our officials, no one implementing the system. The only people who will go to jail are the ones who deign to go to court or to a legislature to seek a redress of these grievances. And then finally, watch us violate the 8th Amendment in plain view against excessive fines. Right there in the Constitution, our founders feared it, deeply feared it. Watch us violate the 8th Amendment and nothing will happen, and judges will be petrified, terrified to even think of siding with Donald Trump, lest the left go after them too. This is a tutorial in who runs the society and how decayed our democracy has truly become.
Every power center in the United States and really across the West is arrayed against Donald Trump. They don't want him to run for president, much less win. But Trump does have one arrow left in his quiver, and that's his voters. They are not the most powerful people in the world, but they have the most essential jobs. In general, Trump voters are not working on climate issues or ESG or diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're not staffers at the Aspen Institute or in some bloated university. They are the people who pave the roads and grow the food and then deliver it to your grocery store so you don't starve to death. They are the actual essential workers in this country. And a lot of them really support Donald Trump, and they understand exactly what's happening to him, which he is being crushed beneath the wheels of world power structures, obviously. And so some of them, truckers, long-haul truckers specifically, are now refusing, in response to what's happened to Trump in the state of New York, to deliver goods, essential goods, to New York. And that would include groceries and fuel. Jake Logan has spent many years delivering these things, fuel specifically. He's a hazmat trucker who drives all over the Mountain West through some of the most dangerous passes in the continental United States. He supports this boycott. He joins us now from Salt Lake City to tell us why. Jake Logan, thanks so much for coming on. I summarized.
It's great to see you, Tucker. Thank you.
It's great to see you. And I summarized really quickly what you do for a living, but will you just explain it a little more? What's your job, just for some context?
My job simply is to haul and deliver fuel, diesel fuel, to small mountain towns across the West, across the Rockies. Just most beautiful country, the finest people you'll ever want to meet.
So that would include in the winter, having been through some of those passes, 10 or 12,000 foot passes in the Mountain West. What's it like to drive a fully loaded diesel fuel truck down that grade?
It can be an adventure. Sometimes if there's too much snow, they might close the road for us. Or they'll have chain restrictions. We'll have to chain it up. But you'd be surprised how quickly you can get used to driving one of these big rigs, these fuel trains across the Rockies. It's spectacular.
It sounds it, and it's also essential. It's not a job that just anyone can do, and without diesel fuel, then the country grinds to a halt and people starve to death. So I just wanted to make it really clear up front that you don't work at some nonprofit in Boston or a biotech firm. You're actually keeping the country alive.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So with that in mind, why would you support Trump? Why would you have strong feelings about what happened to him in New York? Tell us your view.
Well, I tell you what, I am proud to stand with my fellow brothers and sisters in the trucking industry. They are among President Trump's strongest supporters. And we, along with other MAGA Patriot Americans, have been watching how this government has been persecuting President Trump. And we are fed up with it. Americans and truckers primarily are standing up and saying, we have had enough. And this boycotts have been very effective in the past. And I support this boycott, and hopefully this will just be the beginning. I would support boycotts of other blue cities, and this is our way of peacefully protesting and hopefully bringing President Trump back to the White House.